Alright, here we are with Nerissa Campbell. Say hello to the viewers.
Hey guys.
Nerissa Campbell is a songwriter and singer from Perth in Australia, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to do a little interview. So, I read on your website that you spent time in Bali.
I did.
As well as Perth.
Yep. My family moved around a lot, but my mum had a real love affair with Bali, so she used to go there all the time, and eventually had a business there and married an Indonesian guy. So we spent a lot of time in between Perth and Bali, and every time we kind of came back to Australia, we would move somewhere new. So Bali was more the constant place for a long time.
Really? Whereabouts in Bali?
You know, it was in Legian, like total tourist area. Legian, yeah.
Legian, right?
Mm-hmm.
I used to surf, so I know the names of these places.
Yeah, but it was back in...
How far is that from Kuta?
It's not that far. We used to walk, but back in the day there was no, road that went along the beach. There was just the Jalan, Legian, and nothing in between Kuta and Legian. It was just nothing. So we would be just riding our bikes down the main road, and with everyone else riding their bikes, there was no cars or
in the 70s,
anything.
is this?
In the early 80s.
Early 80s.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And there must have been bars in Kuta by that stage, though?
There was a few bars in Kuta, yeah. Yeah.
Just a few?
I think so. I can't remember. There was a lot, I guess. I didn't go to them, so...
Mm. And then what happened?
After Bali, then we ended up in the northwest of Western Australia, and because that was closer to Bali, so we ended up there and just sort of hung around there for a few years. And I had actually had a really, really amazing music teacher, and I played trumpet all through school, and he was actually leaving that school that I was at and moving to Perth, and took our whole class down to Perth on school camp, basically, and took us to WAPA. Mm-hmm. And I think I was 14. I was like, oh my God, this is what I'm doing. I didn't care what I did there either. I was music, drama. I just wanted to go there. And anyway, we found out that he wasn't being replaced at our school, and he came over to my house and told my mother that he thought that I needed to continue with music, and if I wanted to move down to Perth with him and his family, that they would board me.
Oh my goodness.
I know, he really, really believed in me. I still kind of hang on to that now. It keeps me going. Like hope. Someone believes in me out there.
Gleam of hope somewhere.
Yeah, someone saw something way back when I was a kid. And anyway, so my mum was of course mortified at the fact that I would potentially do that, and so we all moved back down to Perth so I could continue.
The
whole family.
Wow, that's nice.
Yeah.
How many of you were there?
It's just my mum, my sister, and I. So just the three of us.
Your mum and your sister's older than you are?
2 years younger.
2 years younger.
Mm-hmm. She wasn't impressed.
She wasn't happy? No. She liked up north?
Yeah, she liked up north, and she just kind of thought it was sort of unfair that just because you
liked something that...
Because I wanted to do
we
something.
all had to go.
Yeah.
And she had to leave her friends from school.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like on the coast, or?
We actually lived in a little town called Wickham, which is very close to Karratha. Mm-hmm. It's like a little mining town, very small.
How did you survive there?
In what way?
I mean, how did your mother put food on the table?
Mum was a barmaid, and also was a little bit of an entrepreneur. So she had a shop in Bali, and she tried to open one in the town that we lived in, and wasn't very successful.
In Legian?
She had one in Legian, but then in Australia.
Oh, right.
Yeah, in Wickham.
Mm.
Which didn't go so well. She used to have one in Perth as well, so she had a few things going on.
Mm.
But the one in Wickham didn't work out so great anyway, so...
It's not happens when you open businesses.
Yeah.
My grandfather opened a pub, at some point.
My grandfather was a publican
He lost money
in business.
Opening up hotels in Australia.
Do you feel like that oh, now I'm asking you a question. Do you feel like that has affected you? Like, do you feel... do you embrace the fact that as a musician you are a business person?
Mm.
Or is it...
Well, I think it's in my genes a little bit.
Yeah.
Simon Barker described it as an entrepreneurial spirit. So I do, but I also have my father's caution.
Right. I'm a little bit the same. I have my father's caution.
Because he saw his father
mm-hmm.
kind of taking risks in business, and I think that probably affected him. So you moved down to Perth.
Yes.
Enough about me. Which is, interesting.
We'll have to turn the camera around.
So you come down to Perth, and you're 15 or something.
Mm-hmm.
And you never lived in Perth at that point?
We had lived in Perth.
A little bit.
Yeah.
Wow. What was Perth like then?
Sleepy. I mean, it was like how the rest of Australia saw it back then. It was like a city that was like a country town.
And so it's changed a lot?
Now, yeah, with all the mining and everything that's going on, it feels a lot different. There's a lot of money there at the moment. It's kind
I
of
remember
crazy.
it was the most expensive city in Australia.
Oh, really? I'll go there now.
I went on tour and I was like, wow.
Yeah. Well, when was that?
2009. I went to
Perth. Yeah, that was already kind of in the changed times.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It always has been my sort of... Well, when I first came to New York, it was sort of my thing. I was like, well, if everything fails, at least I can go home. I come from a beautiful city. It's laid back. It's cheap, but I couldn't now. Yeah, I'm like, I can't afford to go back to Perth. It's too expensive.
I've thought about that. Yeah, I woke up in the middle of the night and thought, I've had it with New York. I'm going back. And then I woke up an hour later and I thought, how would I afford to live in Sydney now? Musicians can't afford to live there.
At least you get paid for gigs in Australia.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. The cost of living is just as high as here, and it's like, why would I do that? Unless I was at a point where I wanted to go home and sort of give back in a way to where I'm from.
Teach people.
Yeah.
Mm. And so you then you were still studying the trumpet when you got back to Perth?
Yep. I was studying classical trumpet. I was not allowed to play jazz. and I really wanted to I really, really wanted to learn to improvise. I could not, and I didn't know how people did that. I was like, what? How do you not know what to do? How do you know what to do when you don't have the music in front of you? Like, how do you do that? And I did music as my TE, as one of my TE subjects. So I had to take, do exams and stuff. And they're like, we won't know how to judge you or mark you if you play jazz. So I didn't go to a school where that was encouraged, just because no one knew about it. And so I finished high school and trottled off to WAPA with my trumpet. I'm going to the jazz course. And they're like, basically asked me what I was doing there, because I didn't know anything about jazz, and to go away and learn about it and come back next year. And so I didn't even know how to do that. I was pre-internet. I'm like, where do I find...
Well, I have the same story. It's
exactly a similar thing. I'm like, how do you find, can't you... And I was too young and shy and stuff to, call up or go back to WAPA and say, can someone help me here? I really, really want to come and learn. And so the next year sort of came around and I was freaked out, and because I just was not living the life that I wanted to lead. I was at uni doing English and art, which was fun, but not what I wanted to do. But so a couple months before the auditions, I was like, well, maybe I'll have a couple singing lessons because I can imagine singing without reading music. And maybe I'll be better at using my ears if I'm singing. So I really luckily found a teacher without trying very hard that had gone through the con and knew everything I needed to know and taught me.
A singing teacher.
Singing teacher. I think I had maybe 2 months of singing lessons and rocked up and got in on singing and auditioned on trumpet again, which I still didn't know how to play any jazz on. And yeah, I got in on singing, and that's when everything sort of shifted.
Went that way. Wow. And so you stopped playing the trumpet, or?
I used to cheat a little bit.
Do you have a trumpet in New York?
I do. I have a really old trumpet that needs to be fixed up, and I should bring my trumpet from home. It's kind of gathering cobwebs. I keep meaning to get back into that. But I used to take my trumpet to the sight reading class, the jazz sight reading class, because I couldn't imagine singing and reading music. It's retarded. Like I think of singing and just using my ears, and then I think of instruments as reading. I did then, and so I kind of cheated in a few classes and used to bring my trumpet in on the stuff that was too hard for me to do.
When you were studying back in northwestern Australia, did you memorise the pieces, or?
No.
Were you a good reader?
I was a really good reader.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, so I had that problem. I didn't listen.
Right.
I think I had enough natural ability to listen that I got away with it, but I was really reliant on reading.
So you did the course in Perth, and you have a degree, or?
I have an associate's degree.
Associate's degree in jazz.
In jazz.
And how many years were you there for?
I was actually there for 3 because I did a certificate of music first, and then 2 years of the ADPA.
Right.
Yeah.
So does that qualify you to teach in Perth?
I think I can teach in Perth with that. There's other people
in
who are.
School?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure there's other people who just have ADPA that are teaching in.
Right.
Even back at WAPA.
Teaching classes, or? Private students?
Private students, and then in high schools and stuff as the private, or like the instrumental teacher, and then I guess instrumental teachers at the con. I'm not sure.
So you just arrived at singing by accident?
Yeah, totally.
And then there were gigs in Perth?
Yep.
Singing? And were you playing with people like Ben Vanderwall and Des and Matt Jodrell and people that you still play with now in Perth? Isn't that great?
It's been great. so much fun.
Isn't that great?
That they all, that everyone's over here. Yeah, it's like, yay, my friends, they know me, they know what I'm about. I don't have to explain too much to them. They saw me when I was trying to scat and stuff, like from the beginning.
Do you scat now? You gave that up?
Yeah. There was a time when that was really important to me, and I really enjoyed it as well. But then I realised that scatting for me, I wasn't saying anything, and it didn't. For me to scat didn't move me with emotion in any way. So I actually moved more to songwriting. And stopped.
When did that start? When you came here, or?
It started before I came here, actually. I've always been somehow good, I don't know why, but at pushing myself forward and trying to do new and different things with my music. And I had got booked for a show at the Perth Jazz Society, and Helen Matthews said to me, "So Nerissa, well, what's your show going to be? We're putting the program together and it's going out tomorrow, so tell me what this show's going to be about." And I just got booked for it, and I was like, well, I have to do something different, and I've already done the jazz standards, and I've done the singing the pop songs, and reharmonizing them, and I've done that, and I've done
technical hitch there.
falling down. What am I going to do? I was like, okay, well, this concert's gonna feature originals. Mm-hmm. She's like, great. And my friend was standing next to me, and he was like, have you ever written a song? I was like, no. And so I had 5 weeks, and I wrote 5 songs, and I performed them, and the feeling of doing that, it was different. Like, I sang differently. And I was really, really nervous about it, and felt like that was something that I couldn't do, you know, that people didn't want to hear that they want to hear jazz standards from the jazz singers, and so I was really kind of shy about that. Not long after, I moved to New York, and was singing over here, and would kind of like intersperse like a song I'd written here or there. And then I came to do my first album, and I kept coming home to my husband with these lists of songs. So what about if I put Gingy on the record? And he would say to me, your record should be all originals. Oh. And I was like, no, I can't, because that's not what jazz singers do. I was really, really, you know, thinking that people wouldn't want that. Anyway, he finally convinced me, and so I put this record together that was all originals, and that came out in 2003. And after I did that, I was like, right, from now on, this is what I'm doing. And New York definitely helped.
Something Orange? Excuse me.
Paint Me Orange.
Paint Me Orange.
Paint Me Orange is the first album. Yeah. So then after that, then it became really important for me to write original music.
Did you feel like that the fact that you were in maybe a slightly more anonymous setting enabled you to express yourself in a different way than being in Perth and knowing everyone? Actually,
no. I think what the thing for me was that really made me, that New York really did for me, was that I wasn't getting paid. And I was doing these standards gigs, and they were fun, but my dad came to visit, and he said, what are you doing? You're doing exactly the same here as you were doing in Perth for no money. And I feel sorry for you because your life is really hard. And I was like, well, what am I doing? What am I doing? Why am I doing this? I want to sing my own songs. And so then music became for me really about a focus on what I wanted to do. If I wasn't going to get paid for it, I wanted to create for myself and put something out there that was new. Hopefully people would like it. I didn't really give a shit if they didn't. And so that's more what changed for me in New York.
And did you feel that the experience that you had moving here, that those experiences were things that you needed to write down, document?
As far as songwriting goes,
or just did you want to capture the essence of life in New York in a song, or the essence of what a girl from Bali?
No, I think back then I was just writing, and I kind of let anything come out, be what it may. And I actually, most of the time I write, I start on piano, and I will be really struck with the mood of a song, and then it will sort of come to me what that song is about. It'll remind me of something. And I've always been really incredibly nostalgic and sentimental. And so I found that a lot of my songs have been about the past. And then I guess in the last couple of years, the songs have been more about life in New York.
You've caught up.
They caught up. Yeah, I've been here long enough that I can look back.
Nostalgic about New York.
Exactly. So my last album, I was really trying to capture what it felt like to
be in New York.
Be in New York in winter specifically, because summer's a whole different thing. But to be here and to have the kind of struggle with New York that I think a lot of people have.
Gives you a lot of time to write songs if you're trapped in the house in a blizzard.
It does. Unless you're living in like a tiny little shoebox, and then it's just crazy. But anyway.
So you came here in 2001?
Mm-hmm.
Before the terrorist attacks?
2 months.
2 months before. And were you by yourself then?
I was staying in a friend's apartment. So I was living with some other Australians actually, and we were actually living 2 blocks from the World Trade Center. So that was really, really a crazy time. I ended up by myself that day because we all kind of ran in different directions.
Were you in the apartment at the time?
Mm-hmm.
Watching on the television? Were you awake? I remember it was really early.
I wasn't awake because I had waited tables the night before and got home kind of late. So it was kind of noisy downstairs outside, as you can imagine. And then my roommate's mum actually called from Australia to see if she was okay. And then we turned on the television and saw what was going on. And
which street were you on?
Oh gosh, I can't even remember now. Greenwich.
That's an avenue, like it's parallel to Broadway.
Yeah, but it was below the World Trade Center.
On Greenwich.
I think it was Greenwich. We were right by the
water. On the west side. Kind
of in the middle, like near the Rector Street stop.
So you didn't stay in that apartment for very long.
No. No. We all went up to the roof in our pajamas actually.
Did you?
Yeah. And there's a photo floating around of me somewhere up there, my pajamas. Once we got to the roof, we were like, oh, we should
probably should
boogie
go
on out.
Had the buildings fallen down at that point?
Mm-mm.
So they were both up, and you got up to the roof, and you could see the smoke, and then you had the good sense at that point to run.
Well, then we went back downstairs, and I got dressed, and I actually grabbed.
What did you take with you?
My passport and all my money.
And you left everything else?
Yep.
And what happened to that? That would have still been there eventually.
That was there. Like, I went back a couple of days afterwards to get an army escort. That's how we were kind of in the zoned off area. And I went to get my case. I was just sort of staying at my friend's place, so I didn't have very much. But my suitcase and all my stuff was there, and I didn't keep any of that stuff. It just had the vibe. Had dust and crap all over it.
So the 3 of you were displaced.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I was lucky because I was just subletting, but the people who actually lived in that building, they weren't allowed to get out of their leases, even though their building was unable to be occupied. And so I know a couple.
I've met some landlords like that.
Yeah.
In New York.
So my one friend I had one friend who I think was living on couches for a year. The other 2 went home.
To Australia?
Yeah.
It was all there like, okay, New York.
I think so,
you win.
Yeah. I don't know if I ever saw those 2 again. I don't think I've ever seen them again. I think we lost each other, and then I really don't know. I've kept in touch with them vaguely, but
you decided to stay.
Yeah, everyone called me. They're like, so you're coming home, right? And I just couldn't fathom getting over that anywhere else but in New York. With everyone else that had gone through it. Yeah.
I got very, very depressed a couple of weeks afterwards.
Yeah, I think I was. I think
very,
I was
very, disturbed. It didn't last for that long. But really? I went to Japan, yeah. But it was heavy.
I think it lasted for me for a long time.
I went away and came back. Like I went to Japan and Australia, and I came back to New York actually and lived here again for about 3 months, up until our first anniversary. But I just remember sort of coming back and everyone was still kind of nuts, you know?
Yeah, just
really nuts. And there was a really strange vibe in New York.
Really?
Well, mate, I don't know. It's funny, those things is what's in your head.
Yeah.
How much of this is your own perception of what's going on and what's actually going on?
Right. It's hard to know. It's hard to know. Yeah.
So, but were you doing any gigs at that point, or?
Yeah, I think I had like one little gig uptown.
And who played on that gig?
It was a gig I inherited actually, and so my friend's band was playing, which was Ed McEachen and Joe Fitzgerald.
Oh, Joe, yeah, I remember Joe. Bass player.
Yeah. So they were playing, and so I met them and played with them every week. It was
for a long
fun.
time.
Yeah, for a while, until I actually had to go home, which was a whole other story.
Do you want to talk about that?
Deportation and
you got deported.
Kind of. Yeah. Sort of. I didn't do anything bad, but
if you broke the law, I don't think we should discuss it.
I didn't break the law because I was paranoid about it after some other Australian musician who I don't know. Yeah, well, if he wants to, that everyone knows, right? So everything happened with Ben, and I was like, oh my god, I can't accidentally or anything lie about anything to do with staying here or not. So my husband, who was my boyfriend at the time, and I went to Canada when my visa had expired.
What visa do you have? An O1 visa?
At that time, I just had a
tourist visa.
A year tourist visa, and went to Canada, called immigration before I left, and they're like, yeah, you can come back, just come back on a 3-month one. And so we actually were going to Canada, coming back, and then going to Australia. So we had our tickets to Australia together, and my sister was in Canada at the time, which is why we were going up there first. And then they wouldn't let me back from Canada. And they told me I had to stay away from the States for a year. So then I was in Canada and
for a year?
No, I got stuck in Canada, and then I flew home. I had to change my ticket. And my husband met me. It's actually the
carrier's, isn't it the carrier's responsibility? The airline's responsibility that if you get to an airport and yes, they won't let you in, the airline has to give you another ticket. Is that right?
Yeah, but this was on the train.
So they gave you a train ticket.
They actually put my sister was with me, and that's another whole story, but and my husband, but they took us back in paddy wagon back to Canada, and they wouldn't let him come with us because he walked back. He got off the train and walked back. And so we were in Canada for a little while, and then I was like, okay, I guess I'll go home. And so he would call me from New York because all my stuff was in New York. Do you want this red sweater?
Really? And so the relationship was sort of over at that point, was it?
No, because he was coming to Australia in a couple months anyway.
Oh, he's saying, do you want me to bring
this? Do you want this red sweater? So I didn't have anything. Just had like a little carry-on bag.
So you stayed away for a year?
Stayed away for a year, which was crazy because then he came to Australia and he was only allowed to stay for 6 months. So we had this gap. I'm like, what are we going to do now? So we went to London and stayed there and bartended for a while.
Doesn't sound too bad.
No, it was fun. It was really fun. I recorded Paint Me Orange. And then we came back and I checked the little box saying I'd been refused entry, and the immigration guy was like, there's no record of it on your thing. I'm going to have to send you to secondary. So I trottled off to the horrible room. And they kept me there for a really long time, like just being, immigration people. And eventually I was like, what do I need to do? My boyfriend's American. I want to move here. I don't want to do anything wrong. I haven't done anything wrong. What do I need to do? They're like, well, just spend more time in your own country. It's like, I've only been here 1 year out of my however many.
But they let you in?
Finally
That's
let me
nice.
in. Yeah. Yep.
So people aren't all that bad everywhere. So they let you in, and then eventually you got married.
Mm-hmm.
And was that what got you a visa, getting married, or did you have a visa in the interim?
I didn't. And
there's a fiancé visa, isn't there?
Yes, which it's kind of like a weird story. My husband and I had been together for a while, and but the minute I got to New York, I knew that I wanted to stay here.
Mm-hmm.
So I felt like that I didn't want to get married, so I could stay. I didn't feel like that was fair on our relationship.
Yeah.
And so I was trying to apply for the performers visa, but we'd already, had to go backwards and forwards a couple of times. And
you've been through a lot together.
Yeah, and
At that point, you might as well get married. I mean, getting married is a lot
easier.
less of a thing to do in a way than that.
I was trying to get the performers visa, and I had everything, but I couldn't find a sponsor. And then it was like time for me to go home again. We're like, this is just stupid. We should get married. So.
Oh, well, that's nice. That's a nice story.
We've been married 9 years.
That's nice.
It worked out so far.
So, can you tell me, like, what were your goals when you arrived?
I don't know. I think I really just wanted to check out New York, see as much as I could, play if I could. I kind of had that feeling of, it's New York, who am I to think I can play here?
Sure. I know that feeling.
Yeah, right. But then I did have some gigs, and realised that we actually get trained really well at home, and and that I had a good solid background to not have to feel that way. I feel like I really got messed up from September 11th, and a lot of my goals just sort of went away.
Just started to live for the moment.
Yeah, it's just like I don't care.
Opening a beer at midday and going, well,
it's New York.
If the world's going to end tomorrow, I might as well have a beer now.
Yeah, so I just kind of plodded along, which I feel like I always done. Like, I have times of intense focus of what I want to achieve, and then I get kind of really scattered when I get too focused. I get really like, oh my god, I don't know what I'm doing. I just want to write music and do the best that I can. So it's a really hard balance to chase those non-musical goals, I guess, that are not related to creating, but related to moving your career forward. That's been the hardest thing for me. But I'm optimistic. One day I'll get somewhere, do something.
Well, hopefully you can just continue to improve.
I think that's
in all areas, your career and your music, and
I think that's paramount. That's important to me.
And just look back at what you've achieved and pat yourself on the back.
Stop and do that sometimes.
And just pat yourself on the back for surviving in New York. Which is pretty impressive.
It's a fun place to try and survive most of the time.
And have your goals changed, or?
They have. I in a way, and in a way not. Like, I used to think that all I wanted to do was to tour, and I realized that I don't actually want to do that. My friends have a post-metal band, and I've sang with them a bit and gone on tour with them, and realized that
it's hard work.
It's really hard work. It's really, really tough. And So I kind of was like, I don't, and I have other friends, you know, that on tour for like 200 days of the year. They're the ones who are kind of progressing in their career as far as people knowing who they are and stuff. But I don't want to do that. So I was like, well, what do I want to do instead? And I think it's come down to, I love performing and it's really important to me. But I also really want to keep writing. And I'm hoping that somehow I'll find a way of keeping on doing that.
And so, can you tell me, like, how has your impression of New York changed since you've come here? I mean, was it what you expected, or? Yeah,
it was exactly how I imagined it.
Really?
Yeah, it was really. When I first came here, I was so excited, and there was. I feel like my Australian accent really came out just then. I was super, super excited, and there was so much to do, and you know, I was here in this big city that was so exciting, and I don't feel quite that way anymore. I feel like New York's sort of I know it really, really well. I've lived here the longest of anywhere in my adult life, and it's sort of like a little bit like an abusive relationship. A little bit. But then the times that it's really good, it's like really, really good. And at the moment it's really good, and so that's great. But my impression is that New York will give you everything you want. But it can also take everything. And it depends on you, like where you're at. If you're in a bad place with New York, then shit's gonna happen. It's not gonna be good. It could, you know, like I feel like when I first got here, I would hear stories from other people who'd been here who either really, really loved New York or they really, really hated New York. There wasn't really like, oh, New York's okay. And I feel like after living here a long time that I understand both sides of those things.
And do you think New York's changed since you've been here?
Totally has changed.
Really? How's it changed?
I think it's always changing, and you know, it expands and contracts, it feels like. And as artists, me as one of them, have had to move so much to kind of keep up with affording to live somewhere, and just sort of watching, you know, things that I really loved, whether it be a bar or a restaurant or a club or friends or whatever, come and go. It's always changing in a way that I think it always will. It always has. I think that we forget that New York's always
changing.
Always changing. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. That the prospect of renewal and new opportunities, and
you can always. Someone said to me the other day, you know, you
can change for you.
Yeah, you can always reinvent yourself in New York. If you feel like you've been a hermit for 6 years and you haven't been doing your music, you can start again. And
yeah, that's good, isn't it?
Yeah,
that's inspiring. And so, how about you? How has your impression of Australia changed since you've been here?
That's really interesting, actually, because I always was going to leave Australia. In a way, you couldn't have got me out quicker. I didn't want to be there. I didn't feel like I belonged in Australia, and I don't know if that had to do with an upbringing between Indonesia and Australia. I don't know what it was. The fact that we as a family moved around so much, and I didn't have like a core people that I'd known a really long time. I don't know, and my mum was really big into, you should travel and see the world, and I think I went to Europe when I was 19, and I went with a friend of mine who really, really missed home while we were away.
Australia.
Really, yeah, really miss Australia. And I was just like, how can you miss Australia? There's so much world out here. Like, we're so isolated. And I understand people always ask me why Australians travel so much. And it's like, because we're so far away. And so everything was really, really exciting to me. And
I mean, if home is Western Australia, then you have to travel.
You have to. Home is more Perth.
It's very hard to stay in Western Australia for your whole life.
Well, for me, it would have been. And I mean, we do live in Perth. Perth more feels like where I come from, but even that, you know. And I did move to Melbourne for a little while, and I was in Melbourne. I'm like, well, what am I doing here? If I come to Melbourne and move away from my family, I might as well go to New York. Because if you're going to do it, do it.
Yeah.
Go to where it all is. And I came in, the first time I came to the States was in the year 2000, and I actually went to California and did a summer jazz workshop at Stanford University. And I never really wanted to come to America so much before. And I came and did that course and found how giving everyone was in the jazz world. Just in general, I suppose. I feel like Americans are quite giving.
Positive
people.
And supportive.
Yep. And so, yeah, I came and I was like, that's it. I'm moving to New York. Everyone's like, what, you don't know anyone there? What are you doing? I'm like, I don't care. This is where I've got to go. So I just kind of dumped myself here.
Being a jazz musician is a very hard thing to do, isn't it? And it's you do need people to give you a bit of encouragement.
Yeah.
You know?
The encouragement definitely helps.
Yeah. I have more questions. We've been talking a long time, haven't we? Let me look at the thing. Yeah. Well, I mean, why jazz music and why New York? And were you listening to records in Australia, or you listen to singers, or Sarah Vaughan, or trumpet players, Chet Baker?
I like Chet Baker. I was never a big Sarah Vaughan fan. Sorry. I was listening in Australia, but that changed when I came to New York too. What I was listening to, and I feel like I feel now that my background is in jazz, and I get called a jazz singer, but I don't feel like I relate to that in the way that I used to. I relate much more as a songwriter and a performer. I found that in Australia I was all about jazz, all about it. Like, I had the jazz blinkers on, and I felt like, I need to, if I'm going to be a good jazz musician, I need to reharmonize everything. It was really important to me as a singer to feel like that I felt like I had to prove something to the other musicians, that I knew what I was...
You're a musician.
Yeah, that I knew what I was doing. And I remember I wrote this one song that was like, had all these beautiful chords, and I think I was listening to lots of Bill Evans at the time, and this song I wrote was really, really beautiful, and I'm like, this isn't me.
Yeah.
What would it be like if I wrote a song like a rock song with 3 chords and brought my jazz musicians in and told them I want this song to sound like a drunken bar.
That's been drinking.
Yeah, or something, whatever. A lonely person walking down the street in the middle of winter, whatever that may be. That became much more interesting to me to go to the place where it felt like jazz musicians were trying to go away from. I don't know if it worked or not, but that was what I was trying to do for a long time.
Sure. And do you still feel the need to have jazz musicians playing your music? Is that just because they're your friends, or
I think it's a little...
If it was someone that had a bass
Yeah.
and someone had a drums, if they were your best friends, would that be enough? Or?
It depends. And I think it all depends. Like I do like playing with my friends. I don't feel like it necessarily has to be jazz musicians, but I feel like that my friends who are jazz musicians are really open to what I'm doing, and I feel like it's that openness to being a part of what I'm trying to do is the most helpful, you know. And some people don't get. Some people don't. Well, not that they don't get, but they don't have the same ability, I guess, to work within mood. I feel like some people haven't been able to do that as well as others. Some musicians that I played with, which is totally fine. Like, it's just a different thing. But the next album that I'm doing is actually one that is fusing gamelan and jazz. And I'm contemplating using a non-jazz person on guitar.
You're gonna break your rule, are you?
Because it doesn't have to be jazz, but I don't know yet. I haven't decided.
Are there going to be some Balinese musicians, or?
Yeah, Balinese play. No, not at this point, unfortunately. I play in a Balinese gamelan in New York, and at the moment there's no Balinese people. I think there's a couple There's a couple Indonesians in there, and Americans and Canadians.
Hang on, it's my wife. Oh, it's still going here. You have to be quiet.
Can you be quiet in New York?
Yeah.
Open the door and it's crazy.
Have you heard a gamelan orchestra live?
Well, I play in one.
But I mean, like an Indonesian one.
As in a non-Balinese one?
Well, not a Balinese. You've heard of Balinese gamelan orchestra?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I remember seeing that in Australia.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I feel like that there wasn't so much in Australia. I mean, I saw it a lot in Bali.
Well, I have a few Indonesian musician friends in Australia, in Sydney.
Oh, cool.
And piano player, drummer. And they took me to the thing.
It's awesome.
Great.
Yeah.
Pretty great thing.
Yeah. It's amazing, the sense of how it works and how everyone works together to
There's a lot of freedom in that thing too, right? It seems.
No.
It's just written stuff.
It's actually all learned.
They've memorised, but it's a piece.
Yeah.
It's the same every time.
Kind of. I mean, there's different, like, so you have the melody, and then whoever's teaching the other parts, which surround the melody, I guess. There can be different variations in that, so it can be frustrating as a Western musician, because one week your teacher might say, "Oh, you play it this week this way," and the next week they say you play it a different way, because they can see all the different ways it can be played and forget which way they taught it sometimes. Yeah, but the gamelan that I play in this semester is doing one traditional piece, but we're doing all modern works, including a piece that I've written for gamelan.
For the gamelan.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's super exciting.
And how are you going to fuse the two things? You're going to make a recording with those musicians and Des and Matt and Guillaume, yeah. Excuse me.
Yep.
Well, that's cool.
Yeah.
And you've written some lyrics as well?
Yep. Yep.
Is the music getting a bit lighter? I'm just going to read a little quote.
Probably not.
The sadness and desperation, the loneliness and yearning of a world where joy is elusive, and the hard luck of broken dreams and unfulfilled love falls to the majority. Mm-hmm. Is it that depressing, or?
Well, you left the bit off.
Then there's the bit at the end where it says, "In doing so, discovers there is a glorious redemption hidden there." Yeah. So is this the redemption?
I feel like I read something the other day about, and I'm going to mispronounce this Portuguese word, saudade. Mm-hmm. Saudade.
I don't know. I'm not Portuguese.
About that in relation to music, which means, I guess, the nostalgia in life, but for the past, for the future, for someone, for something. And it's, I guess, like a real sort of sadness, but there's also a real joy there. And I feel like that a lot of my music sort of has that in it. I read that and I was like, oh, there's a term for it. Great. So now I understand a little bit more about what I naturally do, who I naturally am, I guess, as well.
There's a lot of themes in your music of sort of people drinking in bars and the nightlife, and it's 2 a.m. and
that's the last album for sure.
Why is that? Is that because your mother was a bartender, or because you're Australian and it's part of the culture to drink? Or
I to tell you a secret, I'm not a real big drinker.
I don't know you're an alcoholic or a big drinker.
No, so it's kind of strange to me.
Curious.
And we've had this discussion before about. I remember once you said to me, "Why am I always happy?" Because you said you were always sad, and it's like I don't know if that's true or not, but I.
What's the secret?
I don't think you're always sad, and I don't think I'm always happy. That for a start, and I've seen a lot. I've gone through a lot in my life. A lot of beautiful things and a lot of shit things, as everyone has. But I see the sadness in life as well as the beauty. And I think that a lot of that happens in bars, I suppose. I don't know. I guess that is one of the things that has come up living in New York, because I feel like New York is more of a drinking culture
than Perth.
Perth. For me, it's like what everyone does. Like, let's go out and hang out at the bar, and you don't have to drive home. And
right.
The bars are open till 4 a.m, and there's been a lot of raucous evenings.
Musicians stay out later here than they do in Australia, don't they? Do you find that?
Well, the bars are open till 4. If we do a gig and you hang out, then...
And there's really late gigs here. Like 11 till 3 occasionally. And how do you feel about the community here and compared to the community in Australia, and how does the community of Australian musicians affect your life? And how has your view of the community, the jazz community in Australia, changed since you've been here? Was that too many questions?
Yeah, there's a lot. Jazz community. I think the jazz community, most places I've been in my life, has been, pretty tight knit.
Do you think that's Perth?
That it's tight knit in Perth, yeah.
Because of the isolation. Well, how did you feel it was in Melbourne? Was it tight knit there?
I feel like it was. I don't feel like it was very hard to find, a big chunk of the jazz musicians. They were always sort of
hanging out
together and stuff. I am really shy, so it's always really hard. I find it, yeah. I find it hard to kind of burst into a community of people.
Yeah.
So for me in New York, when I found more Australian musicians, and there's been more and more come over, it's been really nice. Like I like meeting new people, but I am really shy. So I feel like I haven't I'm not on the inner of the jazz community in New York. For whatever reason, my own shyness being, probably.
Do you have a support system outside of that? Do you feel like you're part of a different community?
I do.
In New York that's separate to the Australian?
I do. I mean, I came here and I didn't know anyone, so I made friends sort of on my own that happened to be outside of music. Very creative people, writers and filmmakers and non-jazz musicians.
Are they
and
Australians or non-Australian?
No,
Just American people, mostly, or wherever?
Yeah, wherever
New Yorkers.
they're New Yorkers, yeah. Yeah, so I have friends that I've had since I first moved here, and that's where I think I get a lot of my support from, besides like the Australian jazz musicians that I have like held on to.
Yeah. But did you ever try and did you think to yourself, I need to avoid spending time with Australians, and this is a crutch?
When I first got here, I did. And I suppose there's been times where I've thought I should branch out, but I love playing with my friends. And you know, I do have other jazz musician friends that I really love and enjoy playing with as well. It's not like I'm totally isolated, but they're really good friends too. Some of them are non-jazz people, and I hope that I get to play with them one day as well. I've played with some people that I haven't enjoyed playing with since I've lived in New York, and I don't want to play with those people.
Can you tell me, so we're running out of time because we've been talking a long time and the dinner's getting cold.
We need to eat.
That's right. Can you just tell me, what's the best gig that you've seen in New York since you've been?
Oh, I knew you were going to ask me that.
Does it have to be questions
No,
first?
before I got here, it's like he's going to ask me, and what am I going to say? Because freaking hell, I just went and saw Nick Cave the other night, and it was amazing.
That's amazing.
I was so inspired as a songwriter and someone who loves performing. It was great, but I don't know if that was the answer you were looking for.
No, I just wanted to know. Okay, one more question. It's just 10 years time from now, where are you going to be?
There could be many answers to that. I will probably still be here, is the likely answer. 10 years, okay, how old will I be? Okay.
You don't have to say.
No, I won't say, but you know, I'll be getting on. Probably I'll be here, but I would, my husband and I would really love to go live in Europe for a while. We have some really good friends in Spain, so I'd love to do that. But we also have some land in Iowa, 80 acres of timberland. That is
That's right in the middle, right? Is it?
Yeah, and his family owns some land out there that is beautiful prairie, and
you've said this to me before.
Yeah, and so we've always wanted to kind of have that to go to, but
so
I don't know when
you'll retire there.
Yeah, but who knows when we'll be retiring?
If you retire, musicians don't really retire, do they?
No.
So you don't think you'll go back and live in Australia again? It's not really in the cards?
I don't think so, but I would love to be able to spend more time there.
Yeah. I know that one.
Yeah, I would really love to be able to go every year and to go for a good amount of time.
Right? Yeah, that's how I feel.
And I really feel like that I'm going to make it happen somehow.
Yeah. And is that your husband's
He would like to
goal
do that too,
He'd like to be able to spend in Perth, maybe?
Yeah.
Or wherever?
Wherever,
matter?
yeah. I'm sure he would like that too. He would move there if I
you
wanted
asked
to.
him. Oh, you're lucky.
Yeah, I guess so.
Well, let's eat.
Yes, let's eat. Thanks,
Thank you very
camera.
much.
You're welcome.